spoiled.
This for you!
If you haven't already, go watch my video on The Mandalorian Season 1, which is linked below before you watch this video, because as with last season, this season's biggest problem is Baby Yoda. And yes, I'm calling him Baby Yoda, just like how nobody uses Din Djarin, or however you say it, to refer to Mando. Most people have no idea who Grogu is, but they know Baby Yoda, so that's what I'm calling him. The issue last season was that they introduced Baby Yoda too early, and then had 3 episodes where his story wasn't progressed at all. Those episodes would have worked just fine if they had waited to introduce Baby Yoda until halfway through the season. Then we would have been floored by Baby Yoda's introduction, and his story would be the focus of the back half of the season. This season, the focus is solely on Baby Yoda and getting him back to the Jedi, which is good. There's only really 1 or 2 filler episodes, and while the season does get a bit formulaic, it generally keeps the plot moving forward. Instead, this season has some other issues, most of which come to a head in the finale. But before you jump to conclusions, I didn't hate this season. I have a lot of thoughts to get through, both good and bad, so let's go through the season starting with episode 1. In this episode, Mando is looking for other Mandalorians to help him in his quest to get Baby Yoda home, and he hears that there's one living in a secret town on Tatooine. He tracks him down and discovers that it's not a Mandalorian, but Timothy Oliphant, wearing a very ill-fitting Boba Fett suit. Tim agrees to give Mando the armor if he helps the town take out a crate dragon that's been causing problems. This is what I meant when I said the season is a bit formulaic. Almost every episode this season follows this structure. Mando helps someone with a problem, so they will give him something or tell him where to go next. It's not horrible because generally the things Mando helps the people do are interesting, but it's definitely noticeable and can sometimes feel repetitive. So Mando enlists the help of some Tusken Raiders, which actually was one of my favorite parts of the season. I love that this show is making Tuskens an actual race of people with their own language and customs, rather than just this race of savages that they are in the movies. I like that this season explored how the Tuskens don't really like settlers, and how their relationship with the townsfolk kind of mirrored Native Americans and cowboys from US history. Though there are tensions, the Tuskens and townsfolk are able to work together, and with the help of Mando, they take down the Krayt Dragon. The Tuskens get this thing, which is not explained at all in the show, but is apparently a Krayt Dragon Pearl. It feels like maybe they should have had a throwaway line to explain what it is, since the shot lingers on it so long, but whatever. As agreed, Mr. Oliphant gives Mando Boba Fett's armor, along with a chunk of meat, and the episode ends with this. This starts another trend this season of introducing fan service characters. Well, we'll get to that later. For now, just know that Boba's back. And he looks like this now. The next episode is the one I disliked the most from this season. Once again, we have a pointless episode where the episode ends relatively the same as when it began, although it's less pointless than last season's pickings. This time Mando is transporting a frog lady and the last of her unfertilized eggs to her husband, who knows where some more Mandalorians are. But because eggs are fragile, they can't travel through hyperspace, which leads to Mando crashing on this ice world. Frog Lady then leaves the ship and takes a bath with her eggs, which is so dumb. Don't leave the safety of the ship and take your eggs out of their pickle jar. It's your fault you all get attacked by big spiders later. But don't worry, the X-Wings that were chasing Mando earlier and made him crash come back and rescue them from the really big spider. They figure out that Mando tried to save the life of Clone Wars Anakin back in Season 1 and then captured Bill Burr and company, so instead of killing him, they just leave him there to die. Look at his ship, they knew exactly what they were doing. But Mando is able to pressurize the cockpit and they leave. The biggest problem with this episode is that it made me dislike Baby Yoda, at least for a bit. We are told that these are the last of Frog Lady's eggs and she needs to get them to her husband so they can continue their family line. The eggs are very fragile and need to be kept warm, so the threat of egg death is looming over the whole episode. So why would you have Baby Yoda eat them?
Ah! No! Spit that out right now! Oh, I have got to teach you about food.
A Lucasfilm exec later tweeted that Frog Lady's eggs are unfertilized, like the chicken eggs many of us enjoy. But obviously chickens aren't sentient beings, and the child eating the eggs is intentionally disturbing for comedic effect. As a viewer, you've made me care about Frog Lady and her very limited amount of eggs, and I want them to be safe so she and her husband can have kids. We know Mando and Baby Yoda are safe because this is only episode 2 of the season, and even if Frog Lady dies, the important thing is that her eggs make it to her husband. You can literally count the stakes of the episode because they're right there! So if the eggs are in danger and we want to protect them, why would you have your lovable main character eat them as a joke? For one, it's not funny. Baby Yoda is actively lowering the chances that Frog Lady and her hubby can have kids, because each egg does not equal a future child. Each egg is the chance at a future child, and the more eggs you have, the higher the chance. The loss of an egg in this episode should be very sad. Maybe she could have left 1 or 2 in the bath when she was running from the spiders. Or maybe the pickle jar could have gotten too cold for a minute and she lost a few that way, and it's sad. But no. Have your most lovable, innocent character eat the eggs whenever he gets the chance. Doing this just makes the audience dislike Baby Yoda, a character that everyone should always love. And it's even weirder in the next episode when Baby Yoda is hanging with Frog Lady and her husband as they look at their newborn baby. Baby Yoda looks at the little tadpole and we're meant to think he's looking at it lovingly or in wonder or whatever, like when a kid looks at a newborn baby. But instead, we know all that's going through Baby Yoda's mind is, looks tasty it does. It's such a baffling decision. Anyway, moving on to episode 3. Mando lands at Star Wars Fish Market, and this poor dude with a sweet sweater has to do his best to patch Mando's ship back together. As promised, Frog Lady's husband leads Mando to an inn where he meets Davy Jones, who says he can take Mando to some other Mandalorians on a boat. But lo and behold, it's a trap! Davy Jones and his crew try to kill Mando for his armor, but he's rescued by some other Mandalorians. One of which is our second fan service cameo, Bo-Katan.
Sorry, I don't believe we've met. You are...
Bo-Katan. I'm here to rescue you. That's all you need to know.
Now this is probably the best use of fan service this season. Bo-Katan is a Mandalorian and the rightful ruler of Mandalore, so it makes sense that Mando would run into her at some point. Plus she shares an enemy with Mando in Moff Gideon, who has the Darksaber which she wants back. Without getting too deep into Wikipedia, the Darksaber is an important Mandalorian relic. It was created by the first Mandalorian Jedi and now essentially symbolizes rule over Mandalore. Bo-Katan wants the Darksaber so she can be recognized as the legitimate ruler of Mandalore and reunite the scattered remnants of the Mandalorian people. And since it seems Season 3 will be exploring these ideas, it makes sense that Bo-Katan would show up eventually, so I'm not too against her appearing as a fan service character. Anyway, Bo says she'll tell Mando where a Jedi is in exchange for help on a mission. Are you seeing the pattern yet? Mando helps her and Bo tells him where he can find Ahsoka Tano, our third fan service character. But before we go to the next episode, I just want to say that I like that these Imperials are more like zealots than just regular Imperial people. I'm still not happy that the big bad is just the Empire again, but at least this season shows that these Imperials are more cutthroat and desperate than the ones in the original trilogy. Anyway, episode 4 time. Since Sweater Fishman did such a crap job fixing Mando's ship, he decides to visit his friends from last season and get some real repairs. But while they do repair his ship, this repair dude is secretly working for Moff Gideon and plans a tracking device on Mando's ship. Meanwhile, Mando leaves Baby Yoda to sit in on one day of school and steal some kid's space Oreos.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
So he can help Carl Weathers and Cara Dune take out the last Imperial base on the planet. While going through and setting the base to blow, Mando and his friends find out that it's not a base, but a lab, where they were taking Baby Yoda's blood and I guess injecting it into volunteers? This is why Gideon wants Baby Yoda so bad, so they can continue these experiments, but they still haven't really explained what the experiments are. Presumably it's something to do with Gideon trying to create Force-sensitive people by giving them blood with high midichlorian counts? Well, because of this, Mando figures out that Gideon is still alive, and immediately leaves to go pull Baby Yoda out of school before Gideon can take him. Mando's friends escape the base but are pursued by the Imperials. Luckily for them, Mando comes back with his newly fixed ship and Baby Yoda in tow and saves everyone. Now, if Moff Gideon wants to steal Baby Yoda so bad, why didn't he do it now? We're shown that he has spies in the town, plus an entire Imperial base at his disposal. It seems like he could have very easily had someone steal Baby Yoda while Mando was checking out his science experiments. I guess maybe if this is his only spy in the entire town, but still, surely this would be way easier than waiting 2 episodes and having to actually fight Mando to get Baby Yoda. But whatever, he's tracking Mando's ship now, so I guess that's good enough. Also, I really like that they gave Cara Dune a little character moment in this episode by revealing that she's from Alderaan. It's not much, but it's a nice little touch and I appreciated it. Alright, on to the Ahsoka episode. In this episode, Ahsoka is trying to take down this tyrannical ruler of a small town to get information on where Thrawn is. For those who don't know, Thrawn is a whole other thing that would take way too long to explain. He's just a name drop in this season. If you really want more context, just go look him up on Wikipedia. He'll probably be important in future Star Wars shows, but for now, just know he's a bad dude that Ahsoka's hunting. For those who don't know who Ahsoka is, she's our third fan service character.
I'm Ahsoka? Master Yoda sent me.
She was Anakin's apprentice during the Clone Wars, then left the Jedi Order before Order 66, and has been lying low ever since, helping people as much as she can without getting killed. Mando shows up and gets hired by Evil Lady to kill Ahsoka. Then he meets Ahsoka and tells her he's been looking for a Jedi to pawn Baby Yoda off onto. Ahsoka has a chat with Baby Yoda, who we now know is named Grogu. Turns out he was a Jedi in training at the Jedi Temple during the prequels, but escaped during Order 66. Ahsoka checks how force-strong Baby Yoda is, but refuses to teach him because he's too attached to Mando. And we all know how that goes. But Mando convinces her to reconsider if he helps her take down the evil Tyrant Lady. Together they're able to take back the town, and Ahsoka duels evil Tyrant Lady. This fight is a prime example of one of my other problems with The Mandalorian as a whole. Every fight feels slow and clunky. It's not a huge problem, but the moves feel very choreographed and there's a lot of time between attacks where someone who is actually fighting could stab the other person, but instead they wait for their cue. This happens pretty much anytime there's a hand-to-hand fight in this show, especially a lightsaber fight. Look, I wasn't gonna harp on this anymore, but as I was editing this clip, I just had more I wanted to say. So bear with me for just a few more minutes and let me explain why I think this fight is bad. Really, this could be a whole other video, and honestly, after researching this, I'm pretty interested in making a whole video on it, but for now, here's my brief take on lightsaber fights. Everyone makes fun of lightsaber battles, especially in the prequels, for feeling like a dance. Which is fair for some of them. When it feels like people are waiting for their cue, it doesn't feel like they're really fighting. In a real fight, you are protecting yourself from blows from your opponent while looking for openings and opportunities to attack and wound them in an effort to end the fight. In the best lightsaber fights, this is done well because it is a kind of dance. Because it's a series of actions and reactions. Your opponent attacks, you react and block. Then you attack and your opponent reacts and blocks. The best lightsaber fights understand this dance. Not only the call and response of action and reaction, but looking for a weak point where you can get past your opponent's defenses and end the fight. For example, here's Obi-Wan versus Maul and his brother Savage. This fight is so good and I could spend the next 15 minutes breaking down why, but here's the very short and trim version. Earlier, Savage killed Adi Gallia and Obi-Wan has her lightsaber. He's outnumbered and the brothers start to surround him. Action. Obi-Wan kicks Maul away to focus on Savage. Reaction. He presses Savage back and starts kicking his left knee, which was set up earlier with Gallia. Action. Maul comes back up behind him and Obi-Wan spins to block. Reaction. Then Savage is coming up on Obi-Wan's back, so he again kicks and pushes Savage back, giving himself space and kicks his knee again. Reaction. You can see the action and reaction now, so we're going to skip ahead a bit, but keep that knee in mind. Obi-Wan continues fighting but starts losing ground, the brothers getting closer and pressing Obi-Wan on both sides. He's able to keep them at bay, continuing to kick that knee. Then later, as the brothers are about to win, Obi-Wan kicks Savage's knee one last time, finally breaking it and giving Obi-Wan the opening he needs to cut off Savage's arm and get out of that situation. Obi-Wan found a weak point and hit it until he broke his enemy's defenses. But you could say that this fight isn't the same kind of slow, methodical fight that Ahsoka versus the Magistrate is, more like a samurai fight. Fair enough, let's look at another time Obi-Wan fought Maul, in Rebels. This whole fight is a series of mental actions and reactions that result in a 3-second long fight, and it's fantastic. Listen to Sam Witwer, the actor that plays Maul, explain the genius behind this scene.
But here's the thing. So Maul sparks his lightsaber. That immediately makes Obi-Wan react. So what does Obi-Wan do? Hard feelings. Ewan McGregor. Young Obi-Wan. The same guy who would fight in a war. The same guy that would commit acts of violence. The same guy that would go along with all this. The warrior. So then you hear the Force theme and Obi-Wan realizes, I'm not this guy anymore. I'm this guy. And he becomes Alec Guinness. And then in a final move, he goes, and in my final move, not only will I honor my master, Qui-Gon Jinn, and he goes to the Qui-Gon Jinn move, but that's the same trick that he plays back on Maul. Because in the same way that Maul spins his lightsaber, and Obi-Wan goes, I'm Ewan McGregor. No, I'm Ben Kenobi. I'm Qui-Gon Jinn. The moment he thinks I'm Qui-Gon Jinn, Darth Maul goes, oh, I know how to beat you. Tries the same move that he used to kill Qui-Gon, and that's what kills Maul.
So if we take this and look at the Ahsoka Magistrate fight, Ahsoka reacts to the spear and just looks at her. Your lightsabers are down there, past her spear, which is now extended past you. In the previous shot, we see that the Magistrate's arm reach isn't that long. Ahsoka could very easily lean forward and cut off her legs or give her a stab in the torso, but no. Then in this shot, Ahsoka decides to do a big swing around with her lightsabers instead of swinging down on the magistrate's back, or even, again, the legs. That's just 2 moments in the whole fight, but that's my main issue. Ahsoka's not thinking like the highly trained Jedi she is, and Ahsoka's fought far better in Clone Wars as well. I could spend the next 15 minutes explaining why Ahsoka's fights from the Clone Wars are better, where she's actually looking for weak points and thinking, but I guess she just forgot that. But whatever, back to past Dante. It's not a huge issue, and I'm sure most of it is either time constraints or the fact that most people are fighting in big clunky suits of armor, but it's still very noticeable, at least to me. I also have a problem with this spear as a weapon, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, they win the town back, and Ahsoka tells Mando to take Baby Yoda to a Seeing Stone. There, Baby Yoda can reach out with the Force, and if there's a Jedi out there willing to train him, they'll come. Now, let's talk about Ahsoka. I grew up watching Clone Wars, and honestly, Ahsoka is probably my favorite Jedi, only really competing with Obi-Wan, and definitely one of my favorite Star Wars characters, period. So seeing her in live action was strange. I didn't hate it. I actually think Rosario Dawson did a pretty good job portraying her. I think my problem is that, in my opinion, Ahsoka belongs in animation. It's probably mostly my bias since she's a character I grew up with, but I feel like she just works better in animation. It's easier to make characters and fights look faster and more visually interesting in animation. Since you're already one layer removed from reality, you can push things even further. For instance, when Ahsoka does a big jump in Clone Wars, it looks good and I'm not fussed. But when Ahsoka does a big jump in Mandalorian, she looks floaty and all I can think of is the wire setup she must have been on. Also, she just looks and sounds like Rosario Dawson. Ahsoka has a very particular look, and to me it was just distracting to see Rosario Dawson the whole time. Her voice was fine, it does actually sound like a fairly natural evolution of Ahsoka's voice from Rebels, but it's still weird. It's like when you watch an animated Batman thing and all you can think about is, that's not Kevin Conroy. To be honest, most of this is probably just me, but I don't know, it bugged me. And it's sad to me that this is how general audiences were introduced to her as a character, because it means when she finally got her own show, it's live action. It feels like the Ahsoka show, a show based around a prominent animated character, should be animated. I know the animation department is already working on Bad Batch, but to be honest, I'd rather we never got Bad Batch and the Ahsoka show was animated, even though Bad Batch looks good and I'm excited to watch it. But as far as Ahsoka's usage in Mandalorian goes, I thought she was fine. She does have a pretty fair reason to be in the show, but also she definitely feels like a fan service character. Overall, she's not the worst fan service character, but nobody can convince me that she wasn't just in the show to advertise her own show. But whatever, moving on to episode 6. In this episode, Mando takes Baby Yoda to the Seeing Stone. Baby Yoda hops on and makes a force field, and reaches out with the Force to see if there are any other Jedi willing to train him. Meanwhile, Mando is ambushed by Boba Fett and Ming-Na Wen from Season 1, but this time she has robot guts and is indebted to Boba, who has been tracking Mando for apparently the whole season, but only just now decided to talk to him about taking his armor back. Then they're all ambushed by Moff Gideon's troops. Boba takes back his armor, and together they all fight off the Imperials, but during the battle, these robot guys take Baby Yoda. Also during the battle, Mando's ship is obliterated beyond repair, which... why? Mr. Gideon, you specifically put a tracking device on Mando's ship, and then when you've got the kid, you just blow it up, even though you know Mando is alive. It'd be one thing if Mando was in the ship, because then at least you thought you killed Mando too. But no, you're aware that Mando is alive, and you blow up the one way you could unequivocally know where he is at all times. Wouldn't it be more useful to leave the ship intact so you could track Mando and know when he was inevitably going to try to get Baby Yoda back? Don't worry, this is not the only stupid thing Moff Gideon does, but we'll get to that. For now, let's talk Boba Fett. Personally, I'm of two minds about Boba coming back. On the one hand, he is a character with Mandalorian armor, so it makes sense for him to run into Mando, especially with Mando searching for other Mandalorians this season. On the other hand, he got eaten by Sandkraken in Return of the Jedi, and is now yet another Star Wars character who died but didn't really die. To be clear, I'm not against bringing characters back from the dead, so long as there's a good story reason for it. Personally, I'm a big fan of Maul's return in Clone Wars. It makes as much sense as anything else in Star Wars does, and his character is used in interesting ways. He doesn't just come back and do the exact same thing again. I'm looking at you, Sheev. With Boba, I'm not sure just yet. In this season, he's kind of just there. He kills some people, helps Mando for a while, and then chiffs off to become the next Tatooine crime lord, presumably. I like that he kept his word about helping protect Baby Yoda, but since he's such a secondary character this season, I'll have to reserve judgment until we see his new show. One dumb thing though is why didn't he just take his armor from Timothy Oliphant before Mando got there? Like, unless he only just got out of the Sarlacc pit, it doesn't really make sense. I know Tim's town is a hidden town or whatever, but it wasn't that hard for Mando to find, so surely Boba could have found it too. It was nice to see Slave 1 again though, and the sound nukes. I like those a lot. Alright, next episode. In this episode, Mando has Cara Dune help him break Bill Burr from Season 1 out of prison, so they can break into an Imperial facility and figure out where Moff Gideon is. Now, if you watched my last video, you know my feelings about Bill Burr's episode in Season 1. And when I heard that he was in this episode, I was not excited. But to be honest, this is probably the best episode of the season. Not Ahsoka, not the Crate Dragon, not Boba, not even the finale. This episode right here. And it's all because of Bill Burr and the absence of Baby Yoda. You see, most characters in this show are stoic, quiet characters, which is fine, but it means we don't get many conversations between characters. Bill Burr's character, Mayfeld, however, is not stoic and quiet. He's the fast-talking, wisecracking character, and it means we actually get some proper conversations in this episode. They're mostly one-sided, but they're still conversations. He actually has probably the most meaningful conversation in the whole season. He and Mando go undercover driving an Imperial cargo truck with highly explosive cargo so they can get into the facility and get the info they need. While they're driving, Mayfeld talks to Mando, and it's great. He starts by poking fun at Mando always wearing a helmet like he did in Season 1. Because they're undercover, Mando had to change into a stormtrooper outfit and blur the line of his "don't take off the mask" code. And as the conversation continues, Mayfeld starts to question Mando's code and talks to him about how everyone is the same.
Look, I'm just saying. We're all the same. Everybody's got their lines they don't cross until things get messy.
This conversation is fantastic. It brings attention to Mando's character development and how far he's willing to go to save Baby Yoda. It shows us how different he is now to when we first met him in Season 1. On top of that, Mayfeld brings up issues and themes that tie into the rest of the episode. It's absolute genius from a writing perspective. Setting up issues for your audience to start mulling over in a conversation and then tying back to those same issues with the events that happen later in the episode is just fantastic. For example, Mayfeld talks about how everyone is the same. Everyone is just trying to make their way in a big galaxy. For these locals, it doesn't matter who's occupying their planet, whether it be Empire or a New Republic, it's all the same to them. Then he says,
As far as I'm concerned, if you can make it through your day and still sleep at night, you're doing better than most.
Then the truck is attacked by what Mando calls pirates, but as others have pointed out, there's no way these are pirates. Pirates are trying to steal the cargo, but these attackers are simply trying to blow it up. These are locals trying to rid their land of the oppressive Empire, and Mando has to kill them to keep his cover. Then some TIE fighters swoop in and finish off the rest. As the audience, we feel happiness and relief that Mando and Mayfeld are safe and kept their cover. But then the episode reminds us that we just rooted for the Empire. Mayfeld literally says,
Never thought you'd be happy to see stormtroopers.
This also ties back to early in the conversation when Mando pointed out the flaws of blindly following something. Like Mando with his code and not taking off his mask. Where's the line?
Is it that you can't take off your Mando helmet or you can't show your face? Because there is a difference.
Even the Empire are just people trying to make it through each day. Some believe in the cause and others are just there. Same with those villagers. They were just trying to take back their land from the Empire. But because our point of view was with Mando and Mayfeld, we're rooting for them to win and kill the villagers. It's not as cut and dry as it seems. This also ties into a later conversation in the episode, but first Mando and Mayfeld make it to the facility, greeted by a crowd of cheering Imperial officers and troopers, since theirs was the only cargo truck to make it intact. Then Mayfeld and Mando make their way to a terminal to get the info on where Moff Gideon is, but Mayfeld recognizes a superior officer from when he served and is afraid he might recognize him. Mando says he'll go in, but Mayfeld tells him that the terminal has to see your face. Mando takes the data stick anyway and breaks his code, taking off his helmet in a room full of people so he can get the information he needs to save Baby Yoda. Like Mayfeld said earlier,
Everybody's got their lines they don't cross until things get messy.
this writing is just so good. So Mando gets the info he needs and goes to leave, but he's confronted by Valen Hess, the officer Mayfeld recognized earlier. Mando is caught off guard and is about to blow the whole mission, but Mayfeld swoops in and tries to fast talk their way out of there. I also really like how Mayfeld uses a characteristic of Mando's face, which he knows almost no one has ever seen, to make a nickname for him. It's a nice little touch. Anyway, Hess doesn't let them get off that easy though, and wants to sit and have a chat with them. We now get one of the most tense scenes in the entire show. Hess wants to make a toast but doesn't know what to toast to, and Mayfeld brings up Burnin Khan, an event where many thousands of Imperials and civilians were killed because of a decision Hess made.
All heroes of the Empire.
Yeah. And all dead.
Hess says that they died for the greater good. Mayfeld then asks,
All those people, the ones who died, was it good for them? Their families? The guys I served with? Civilians, those poor mud scuffers, died defending their homes, fighting for freedom. Was it good for them?
Hess then says that they outlasted the people who died. He says that the New Republic is in disarray, and with the shipment that Mando and Mayfeld delivered, the Empire will create havoc that will make Burnin' Khan just pale in comparison. He says that people don't really want freedom, they want order, and when they realize that, they'll come running back to the Empire. And the conversation ends with this.
To the Empire.
What a fantastic way to develop Mayfeld's character. Show us that he's not just some wisecracking jerk like we saw in Season 1. He's a human, he's gone through some stuff, he's lost people. And it doesn't come out of nowhere, it's all set up in Mayfeld's monologue earlier in the episode. Mayfeld talks about people who have different beliefs and how in the end, everyone dies either way. We're confronted by Valen Hess, a shining example of someone so blinded by the cause they're fighting for that they can't see the damage it does, the people it hurts. Everything ties together, it's so good! Then the episode ends in a great firefight with Mando and Mayfeld trying to escape after shooting an Imperial officer in an Imperial lounge surrounded by Imperial soldiers. I also love this moment where Mayfeld gives Mando his helmet back and says,
You did what you had to do. I never saw your face.
and then looks away. He doesn't even believe in beliefs or causes or religions, but he respects them enough to give Mando his helmet and keep his face a secret. I don't think I've ever done this big of a 180 on how I felt about a character. Mayfeld, where have you been all season and why did you suck so much in Season 1? Honestly, I probably could have made a whole video just on how good this one episode is, but it's too late now. Anyway, Mando and Mayfeld make their escape, and as a final middle finger to the Empire, Mayfeld blows up the material he and Mando transported, destroying the entire facility. Later, Mayfeld can't take the hint as Mando and Cara Dune make up a story about Mayfeld dying in the explosion so he can walk free. And finally, Mando does the coolest and yet most insanely stupid thing this entire season, and throws Moff Gideon's speech from Season 1 in his face. While this is a pretty sweet moment, it's also supremely stupid. Why would you tell the man keeping Baby Yoda hostage that you're coming? Surely Gideon's response should be, oh, frick, I'll start prepping right away, thanks man. Don't warn your enemy that you're coming, especially when he doesn't know you're coming, and when you have way fewer numbers than him. All you're doing is giving Moff Gideon time to prep, whether that be more fighting units, reinforcements, or even just taking Baby Yoda and leaving the ship entirely. Maybe heading to another secure facility and leaving the ship as bait. Whatever, it's not like Gideon does anything useful with this information anyway. On to the finale. So to start, Mando and his motley crew take out this Imperial shuttle flown by these two guys actively not wearing pilot helmets. Instead, it looks like they're really bad Lobot cosplayers. Anyway, they got Mr. Cloning Science Man, and they get boarded by Mando and Cara Dune. Lobot Enthusiast number 2 kills Lobot Enthusiast number 1 and takes Science Man hostage. He then proceeds to actively anger Cara Dune by saying that the destruction of Alderaan was worth it to get rid of terrorism, essentially begging to get shot in the face, which he does. If he wanted to live and still piss off the lady that had a gun to his face, just move your head behind your hostage, dude. You can't get shot in the face if they have to shoot through your hostage first. I always hate that in scenes where someone has a hostage that they're pointing a gun at. You do realize that they can shoot you before you shoot your hostage, right? You don't have the reaction time needed to pull the trigger before you're shot between the eyes. It's so dumb. Instead, maybe hide behind your hostage so they actually can't shoot you without harming the hostage. Anyway, so Mando and company add Bo-Katan and her right-hand girls to the crew, and they make a plan. Side note, why is Mr. Science Clone Guy so on board with helping Mando? Like, I get he's not a soldier, so he doesn't need much convincing, but he doesn't get any convincing. He actively offers up information to help Mando. Why? Like, the team is unaware of the Dark Troopers or even where Baby Yoda is on the ship before this dude just offers up the information willingly. This is never explained either. He doesn't show up again after this scene. It's so bizarre. So the plan is everyone except Boba will get on the shuttle they just stole and act like they're being pursued by Boba and head for Moff Gideon's ship. The urgency of the situation should mean they'll be allowed to do an emergency landing without being checked as thoroughly as normal. Then the ladies fight their way through the ship heading for the bridge. Meanwhile, Mando will wait and sneak out once everyone is dead and head for the Dark Troopers to disable them. Then he'll head for Baby Yoda. The plan works pretty flawlessly until Mando has some trouble with the Dark Troopers. They activated before he got there, so he couldn't shut them down, but he fights and kills one with his spear and then jettisons the rest into space. The ladies make their way to the bridge only to discover that Moff Gideon isn't there like they expected, which really grinds Bo-Katan's gears for reasons we'll fully understand later. Mando makes it to Baby Yoda and finds Gideon there holding the Darksaber over Baby Yoda. Moff Gideon then proceeds to prove that he is a huge moron. First, he talks about the Darksaber and that it used to belong to Bo-Katan. Then he reveals that he knows Mando has been traveling with Bo-Katan, which is fine. It's not too ridiculous to assume he has enough spies to have seen Mando and Bo-Katan hanging out. He also knows Bo-Katan wants the Darksaber back, so it makes sense that he'd keep tabs on her. He then reveals that he also knows that Mando used his whistling birds, or whatever they're called, on the Dark Trooper like 5 minutes ago. Wait, you know that Mando used his whistling birds, which presumably you know everything that happened in that fight, including that Mando shot your Dark Troopers into space. How? Were you just watching the fight on a security cam or something? Alright, whatever. Let's assume his little Vader suit is tapped into the entire ship's security. Sure. Why didn't you go somewhere else? You knew Mando was coming for Baby Yoda way before he got there. Why didn't you just take Baby Yoda and leave? It's not even like this attack was a surprise to you. Mando told you he was coming. There's no reason you should still be here. He then goes on to guess that Bo-Katan and her party made it to the bridge,
seeking me, or more accurately, this. You see, she wants this.
We know, you just said that. Plus you didn't even say that to let the audience know. We found out Bo-Katan wants the Darksaber 5 episodes ago. Gideon then explains why the sword is important, which, if you've watched Clone Wars or Rebels, you already know, but anyone who hasn't seen those shows doesn't, so it's fine. Mando says Gideon can keep the saber, he just wants Baby Yoda. Gideon agrees and then proceeds to mansplain stuff we already know. He retorts that he already has what he wants, and then says twice that he wanted Baby Yoda's blood to study.
His blood. Study his blood.
Blood!
What?
Blood!
What?
Baby Yoda!
Baby's got what?
Blood!
Then he explains that Baby Yoda has special abilities. We already knew that. This would be permissible if this was information the audience didn't know, so Moff Gideon got to monologue to bring the audience up to speed. But we already know this stuff. We know Baby Yoda's a Jedi. We know you were experimenting with his blood. You don't need to say it again. And what's more, Mando knows all this stuff too. If you're such a know-it-all, Mr. Gideon, why are you telling Mando stuff he already knows? Isn't that just wasting time? Time that Bo-Katan and company could be using to try and find you? So Gideon agrees to let Mando take Baby Yoda, then walks behind Mando while he grabs Baby Yoda. He then spins around and attacks Mando. Now, this is when I'd like to talk about Mando's armor, because I swear this armor has the magical ability to force all attacks to hit it. There are multiple times in this show where Mando is shot or attacked by a lightsaber, and every single time the blow lands on his armor. I don't know if anyone in this show has noticed, but this armor does not cover his entire body. There are so many areas where you could shoot and seriously damage him, especially his legs. In this particular instance, Moff Gideon spins around and decides to attack downwards onto Mando's head and shoulders. Literally the only part of Mando's backside that has armor. Look at Mando's legs. Look how exposed those knee pits are. You could cripple Mando in one stroke and this fight would be over. But no, you attack the one area where he's completely invulnerable to lightsaber attacks. But don't worry, it gets better. Mando pulls out his spear and uses it to fight Gideon. This is my problem with this spear, that I mentioned in the Ahsoka Magistrate fight from earlier in this season as well. There are multiple times in both of these fights where Mando or the Magistrate is holding the spear on either side of where a lightsaber is touching it. If I was Ahsoka or Gideon in either of these situations, you know what I see? Small, unprotected fingers. It would be so easy to just slide your lightsaber up or down and slice off the fingers of whoever's holding the spear. And then the fight's over. And it's not like these fights are so fast that the lightsaber wielders wouldn't have time to do this. Both fights have at least one point where they are holding the lightsaber in one spot against the spear. Just slide the lightsaber down. The fingers are right there. This spear is a bad weapon to use against lightsabers for this very reason. You could very easily just accidentally have your fingers cut off. But whatever, putting that aside, Moff Gideon is acting like he's cornered in this scene. He's holding Baby Yoda hostage, and in this case, my hostage complaint from earlier is void, because if Mando shoots Gideon, he'll drop the lightsaber onto Baby Yoda, so he doesn't need reflexes. Also, Gideon is way too big to hide behind Baby Yoda, so it's all good. But he's holding Baby Yoda hostage, and then tries to backstab Mando when he agrees to let Baby Yoda go. This is how someone acts when they've been cornered. Allow me to repeat myself. You knew Mando was coming. Why are you acting like this was your last resort? You had so much time to come up with so many other better options. It would make more sense if this was like when villains purposefully turn themselves in, like Loki in Avengers or Joker in Dark Knight. But no, you just fight Mando and then are beaten and captured. Was this what you wanted? Because if so, this is a terrible plan. So Mando totes the newly rescued Baby Yoda and the newly captured Moff Gideon up to the bridge. Mando tries to give Bo-Katan the Darksaber, but Gideon reveals that she can't take it. She has to defeat the current wielder in combat in order for her claim to the throne of Mandalore to be legit. I'm not going to complain about this too much, but this isn't how the Darksaber has worked in the past. In Rebels, Sabine has the Darksaber and gives it, and symbolically the leadership of Mandalore, to Bo-Katan, and Bo-Katan reluctantly takes it. So, I don't know if things have changed since then. Maybe it's been out of Mandalorian hands too long, so it's like a thing about winning back Mandalore's honor or something. Also, if Mando is now the proper owner of the blade, we know the fight doesn't have to end in death. He spared Gideon's life and still won the saber, so why don't he and Bo-Katan just fight? She can win and spare Mando's life, and boom, saber's in the right hands. I don't know, but either way, I hope they explain why it has to be one now. Same with Mando and the Watch having the don't take your mask off rule. Then we're reminded that those Dark Troopers that Mando jettisoned into space are in fact droids who can survive in space, because they're back, and they have guns now, which they've seemingly pulled from nowhere, so presumably they always had guns on them. They make their way to the bridge and start punching the door. This is something others have pointed out, but why are these droids so in love with punching? Like these Dark Troopers punching the glass. Why don't you just shoot the glass? Is the glass blaster proof? Do you not have any other useful gadgets like a blowtorch or something to cut through things? Even basic stormtroopers in the very first Star Wars movie ever have technology that lets them burn through doors. I get that these might be blast doors, and these definitely are, but still, is punching really your best option? And then there's this guy who decides to repeatedly punch the single strongest part of Mando's armor, even though he makes no progress except burying Mando into the wall. Who programmed you? Was it this guy? Because that would make sense. Anyway, the droids almost make it to the bridge, but at the last second they're saved by fan service character number 4. Luke Skywalker, baby! Gideon starts to freak out and grabs a gun, shoots Bo-Katan, but she's fine because magic armor, then tries to shoot Baby Yoda, but Mando jumps in front of him with his magic armor, and then he tries to take his own life, but is stopped. Luke continues to cut through the Dark Troopers with zero effort, and while this is a bit slow for my liking, it's pretty good. Then Luke makes his way to the bridge, and...
What's wrong with your face?
Look, this isn't the worst CGI face Disney's done for Star Wars, but it still looks weird. He looks like he's from a really good Battlefront 2 cutscene. Maybe one of those CGI trailers they do for games all the time. And I know a lot of people don't want this, but Disney, you already have Sebastian Stan. Just use him. Even dub him over with Mark Hamill so the voice doesn't sound weird. Or touch up his face a little in post. It's just so strange that you already have someone who looks so similar to young Luke, and yet you insist on doing CGI faces. Plus, this guy's lips barely move when he talks. Luke, enunciate! Half his audio sounds like it was repurposed, unused stuff from the original trilogy. But whatever, this is all personal preference. Let's talk about how he was used in the show. This is the most egregious fan service character in the show this season, which isn't a horrible thing. It makes sense to have a crazy cameo like this in your finale, and Luke does make the most sense story-wise for someone to take Baby Yoda and train him. Ahsoka already refused, so her just showing up and changing her mind would be weird and make the whole Seeing Stone thing pointless. Many people have said Cal Kestis, which I like, but also far too few people have played that game to warrant him being the big triumphant cameo in the finale. Nobody would know who he is. The other big theory was Ezra Bridger from Rebels, but he wouldn't have worked because he's currently missing, along with Thrawn, who Ahsoka is looking for. So if he just showed up and took Baby Yoda like nothing had happened, that would have felt super strange. And again, not a character general audiences are familiar with. So we're left with Luke as kind of our only option. Our problem is that it felt weird with Luke taking Baby Yoda. First of all, he just says, "I'm a Jedi, give your kid permission to come with me, alright, sick, see ya." Like, he doesn't explain who he is at all. You could have at least told him you're Luke Skywalker, well-known Jedi Knight and savior of the galaxy. Come on, you're coming off kind of cold here. But whatever, putting all of that aside, my biggest issue with this scene is that I couldn't stop thinking that Luke was taking Baby Yoda to his Jedi school, which we know gets destroyed like 15 years later. It's supposed to be this moment of relief, like, oh good, Baby Yoda's safe with the Jedi now. But it doesn't feel like that, because we know it's all going to come crashing down in a few years. Now all I'm thinking about is how sad it is that Baby Yoda had to live through 2 mass Jedi murders. 2 Jedi schools falling apart around him. Mando gives over Baby Yoda and has this last moment with him. Which is cute, I really like this scene. Once again highlighting Mando's character growth and how much he cares about Baby Yoda. Then Luke and Baby Yoda leave, and the season ends. Now remember what I said at the very beginning of this video? This season's biggest problem is Baby Yoda. I'm finally going to explain what I mean by that. The season finale is Baby Yoda leaving, essentially being written out of the show. So why was he introduced in the first place if we don't even get to see the conclusion of his story? It seems to me like they wrote him out so they could focus on Mando and his story for season 3. Because like I said in my first video, the entire show changed when Baby Yoda was introduced. Suddenly we had story and the focus was shifted away from Mando and onto Baby Yoda. Then we spent 2 seasons focused on Baby Yoda's story, trying to get him to his people. But then when that goal is achieved, he's written out of the show, and it feels like we just wasted 2 seasons. The show is called The Mandalorian, and yet when they introduced Baby Yoda, it became the Baby Yoda show, featuring his Mandalorian protector. Now the show finally is shifting its focus back onto Mando, and it feels like we wasted 2 seasons on a storyline that doesn't even matter anymore. You could say that Baby Yoda was needed to develop Mando's story, which is true. Mando went from being a fairly ruthless, unfeeling bounty hunter to having feelings, friends, and now being the rightful ruler of Mandalore. Now I know I'm probably all alone in this opinion at this point, but humor me and imagine this. Imagine that Baby Yoda was a cute space dog, or a rare space animal, or even that he's still Baby Yoda, but he's not a Jedi. Mando could still rescue the cute space dog, maybe it's a rare space dog and some powerful underworld people want it for its valuable fur or something. Or if it's still Baby Yoda, make his species just so rare that they want him to sell for a high price. Suddenly we get rid of all that Jedi overarching storyline that took the focus away from Mando, and we still have his cute companion that helps him grow as a character. Then you can have the best of both worlds. Have the show everyone expected and now in retrospect some people would have preferred, with Mando doing his Mando thing around the galaxy, dealing with crime lords, and maybe still vaguely trying to find some other Mandalorians. Maybe that's his mission now. Instead of trying to find a Jedi, his goal is to find other Mandalorians. You can still slowly build to what it seems that the 3rd season is doing, with Mando being the rightful ruler of Mandalore, but also that week-by-week show people were expecting. Mando just doing a different job each week, maybe only loosely connected to one another, like the 3 episodes I complained about in season 1. But instead we got Baby Yoda taking center stage for most of the show, and now having to be written out so we can develop Mando's story without distraction. I know a lot of people will disagree with me, but personally I think this would have been a much stronger show, and something we haven't seen before in the Star Wars universe. Because that's the other problem with tying the show into Jedi and having Luke show up to save everyone, bringing Boba back, having the Empire as the big bad. It's tying everything into what we've already seen from Star Wars, and I think that's holding the show back. We've already seen the Empire extensively. We've already had so many stories where the Skywalkers saved the day. We've had so many stories about the Jedi and training and finding a master. That's literally what every Star Wars trilogy has been about. I for one want to see something new, and I would have liked to have Mandalorian be this bold new show, showing us corners of the Star Wars galaxy we've never seen before. Show me the dark underbelly of the galaxy. Show me how the Outer Rim can't be ruled by the Empire or the New Republic, because so far it seems like that's all that's out there. Really, we've already seen a lot of Mandalore and Mandalorian stories too with Clone Wars and Rebels. Who's the rightful ruler of Mandalore this time? Who's fighting against the current leader? And I'm afraid season 3 will just be a new telling of that. Do something new with your stories. Star Wars is such a vast galaxy with so many opportunities for interesting new stories, but it feels like every time a new Star Wars story is told, it just ties back into the old ones. This is why Baby Yoda is my biggest problem with The Mandalorian. It's because he doesn't allow for new stories to be told, and instead just brings it all back to the formula we know and, I guess, love. Remember how great the first episode of The Mandalorian was? Just a Mando hunting bounties, getting Beskar. I wish we could have gotten more of that. Instead, most of the season was spent asking the audience if they'd be up for a spin-off show about all these other characters. You want an Ahsoka show? How about a Boba Fett show? Rangers of the New Republic? To be honest, Disney, I'd like the Mandalorian show. Anyway, I've talked way too long, so that's it everyone. Those are my extensive thoughts on The Mandalorian Season 2. What did you think? Did you agree with me? Or more likely, do you strongly disagree? Let me know in the comments, and like and subscribe if you want to see more. Comment what you'd like me to talk about next, and I'll see you all in the next video.